In November of 2016, in the north of Ukraine, engineers began pushing the largest object humanity has ever moved across land. It weighed 36,000 tons. It was tall enough to swallow the Statue of Liberty, and it crawled forward at about 10 meters per hour, so slowly that watching it move required patience. It traveled 327 meters, and then it stopped exactly on target with a tolerance measured in centimeters. What it was covering when it stopped was the most dangerous building on the planet, the ruin of reactor number 4 at Chernobyl. And the reason they had to build it far away and then slide it into position is the part of the story that almost nobody knows. In the next few minutes, you are going to understand why the first shelter built over Chernobyl was already dying, why engineers could not simply build the new one on top of the reactor, how you assemble a structure that big while a dead reactor is spitting radiation next door, what is happening inside that arch right now, and why in February of 2025 the whole world suddenly remembered it exists. First, the wound. On the 26th of April of 1986, reactor number 4 of the Chernobyl nuclear plant exploded during a badly run safety test. The explosion tore the roof off the building and threw burning radioactive material into the open air. What remained was not a damaged machine. It was an open crater of nuclear fuel, graphite and rubble, releasing radiation straight into the sky over Europe. The Soviet response to that open wound is one of the most brutal construction stories of the 20th century. The prowess. In 206 days, working through the summer and autumn of 1986, crews built a concrete and steel enclosure around the ruin. They called it the shelter object. The world called it the sarcophagus, and the way it was built tells you everything about the emergency. Much of it was assembled remotely, with cranes operated from a distance, using prefabricated pieces lowered into place, because standing near that reactor for more than a few minutes was a serious dose of radiation. Some of the wells could never be finished. Some of the joints were never sealed. Hundreds of thousands of people, the liquidators, rotated through the site so that no single worker absorbed too much. It is worth stopping on those people for a moment, because the arch that came later exists because of what they did and because of what it cost them. The liquidators were soldiers, miners, firefighters, engineers, bus drivers, ordinary workers pulled from across the Soviet Union. Miners from the Donbass dug a tunnel under the reactor by hand, in heat that made them work almost naked to install a cooling slab beneath the melted core. Soldiers ran onto the roof of the neighboring building in improvised lead aprons, threw 1 or 2 shovelfuls of radioactive graphite over the edge, and ran back, because the machines sent up there had their electronics destroyed by the radiation in minutes. Human beings turned out to be more radiation resistant than robots, which is one of the darkest sentences in the history of engineering. The estimates of how many people passed through that site vary, but they are counted in the hundreds of thousands. It worked. It stopped the worst of the release. But everyone involved knew what they had made. An emergency bandage, not a tomb. The sarcophagus was designed with a life expectancy of around 30 years, and even that was optimistic, because it rested partly on the damaged walls of the very building it was containing. By the 2000s, the bandage was failing. Rainwater was getting in through gaps, running over nuclear fuel and coming out contaminated. Snow was piling on a roof nobody could safely inspect. Birds were nesting inside, and the deepest fear was not a leak, it was a collapse. If a section of that structure came down to the ruin below, it would raise an enormous cloud of radioactive dust exactly where nobody could go to stop it. Engineers had already built a stabilization frame in 2008, propping up the weakest parts, buying a few more years. Everybody understood that the real solution had to be something else entirely. And here comes the engineering problem that defines this whole story. The obvious answer is to build a bigger, better shelter directly over the old one. Except you cannot. Building on that spot means hundreds of workers, for years, standing in a place where the radiation dose is measured not in a career, but in minutes. No amount of protective gear makes that acceptable, and no schedule survives when every worker can only spend a short shift on site. So the solution flipped the problem around. If you cannot bring the workers to the reactor, you build the structure away from the reactor, in a place where the ground has been cleaned and the dose is manageable, and then you bring the structure to the reactor. That single decision shaped everything that followed. About 300 meters west of the ruin, crews prepared an assembly area. They stripped and cleaned the soil, poured foundations, and built 2 enormous concrete beams running east toward the reactor. A pair of rails for something no rail had ever carried, and on that cleaned ground, they began putting together the arch. The numbers are hard to hold in your head. The finished structure stands 108 meters tall, higher than a 30-story building. It spans 257 meters, wide enough that the entire ruin, its stabilization frame, and a tall ventilation stack fit inside with room to spare. It is 162 meters long, and it weighs about 36,000 tons, roughly the weight of 3 Eiffel Towers. It was built as 2 shells of steel with a gap between them, and that gap is not empty space. It is a machine. Dry, conditioned air is pushed through the cavity to keep the steel from sweating, because condensation means corrosion, and corrosion is the enemy of a structure that has to survive 100 years without anyone being able to comfortably climb up and repaint it. The design life is exactly that, 100 years. Not 100 years of standing there looking impressive, but 100 years of holding a functioning industrial environment inside. Assembly happened in a way that looks strange until you understand it. Instead of building upward from a scaffold, the crews built the arch in halves, in sections, lifting each new piece and inserting it underneath, jacking the whole thing higher each time. The arch grew from the top down. Lifting towers raised the structure in stages, and each stage added another ring of steel below. It meant that most of the work happened close to the ground, where it was safer and faster, instead of hundreds of workers hanging in the air above a nuclear ruin. The people doing that work were not improvising the way the liquidators had to. This was a French-led consortium, formed by 2 of the largest construction groups in Europe, working under a contract with an army of specialists behind it, radiation physicists mapping the dose across the site meter by meter, welders certified for steel that would never be repainted, riggers who had lifted heavy things before, but never anything shaped like this. Every worker carried a dosimeter. Every shift had a dose budget. When a person reached the limit for the year, that person stopped working on that site, no matter how skilled or how needed. The schedule was not built around how fast humans could work. It was built around how much radiation humans were allowed to absorb, which is a constraint almost no other construction project on Earth has ever had. And the ground itself had to be treated as a material. Before anything could be assembled, the assembly area was cleaned, contaminated soil removed, the surface covered, the whole zone monitored, because a structure of that weight needs solid, prepared foundations, and preparing foundations means digging, and digging at Chernobyl means lifting radioactive dust into the air of the very place where your workers are about to spend years. Every ordinary step of a construction site had a shadow version of itself that had to be solved first. Then came the day the world watched. What? In November of 2016, the arch, complete and closed, began to slide east along those concrete rails, pushed by a system of hydraulic jacks that gripped, pulled, released, and gripped again, inching forward. The movement took several days. 327 meters later, the largest movable land-based structure ever built came to rest over the tomb of Reactor 4. From that moment, the ruin of Chernobyl was no longer open to the sky. Paying for it required something almost as unusual as building it. The bill for the new confinement came to around 1.5 billion euros, and the total program around the site cost far more. No single country was going to pay that, and the accident belonged to a state that no longer existed, so the money was raised through a fund managed by the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, filled by donations from more than 40 countries. It is one of the very few examples in history of a large group of nations quietly paying, for decades, to contain a disaster that happened in someone else's territory, because everybody understood that a radioactive dust cloud does not check passports. And here is the part most people get wrong. That arch is not a lid. It is not there to sit still and look solemn. It is a workshop. hanging from the inside of the roof is a system of remote control cranes running on rails along the length of the structure with manipulator arms designed to reach down into the ruin. The mission, over the coming decades, is to take the old sarcophagus apart from the inside, piece by piece, and eventually to deal with what lies underneath, the melted fuel that ran through the building in 1986 and solidified into masses that engineers gave nicknames, the most famous being the elephant's foot. All of that has to be cut, packaged, and moved to storage by machines controlled by people standing somewhere safe. The arch exists to make the decades-long job physically possible. So when someone asks whether Chernobyl is finished, the honest answer is that the new confinement did not end the problem. It bought a century, and it built the room where the real work happens. And there is one more reason the arch had to be so absurdly large. One that has nothing to do with the reactor itself. Around the ruin stands a tall ventilation stack, and the stabilization frame added in 2008, and the plan required room to dismantle all of it with machines. A shelter that merely touched the old sarcophagus would have been a shelter you could never work inside. The engineers were not designing a cover. They were designing a building with a job description, and the job description said, fit everything that has to be taken apart, plus the cranes that will take it apart, plus the space for the pieces to be lowered, packaged, and carried out. That is why the span is 257 meters and not 200. The war added a chapter nobody planned for. In the first days of the invasion of Ukraine, in February of 2022, Russian forces took control of the Chernobyl site and held it for weeks. Staff at the plant, the people responsible for monitoring the containment, were kept on shift far beyond any normal rotation, unable to go home. Power to the site was cut at one point, and the world spent several days discussing whether a nuclear facility could safely run on backup generators. When the troops withdrew, they left behind trenches dug by soldiers in the contaminated forest, which is the kind of detail that sounds invented and is not. Which brings us to why this structure was suddenly in the news again. In February of 2025, during the war in Ukraine, a drone struck the arch. It punched through the outer cladding and started a fire that smoldered inside the structure for weeks. Difficult to reach and difficult to extinguish, because you cannot simply flood a building like that with water. Ukrainian authorities and the International Atomic Agency reported that radiation levels outside remained normal and that the containment function was not lost. But the damage was real: holes in the outer skin, harm to the sealed cavity system that keeps the steel dry, and repairs that will take years and money nobody had budgeted. There is something painfully symbolic in that. A structure designed to stand for 100 years, engineered against corrosion, snow, wind, and time, was damaged in its 9th year by something none of its designers had in the risk list. Engineers can calculate for weather. They cannot calculate for war. Step back and look at what this project actually represents. The reactor exploded because of a chain of bad decisions taken in a hurry, in a system that punished bad news. The first shelter was built in a heroic panic by people who paid for it with their health. And then, 30 years later, a different world came back to the same spot and did the opposite. Slow, patient, absurdly expensive, obsessively planned engineering, designed not to fix the problem, but to keep it under control long enough for the next generation to fix it. That is the uncomfortable truth of Chernobyl. Nothing there resolved. The fuel is still inside. It will be dangerous for longer than any structure humans know how to build. What that arch really does is buy time and hand the problem forward with a note attached: we could not finish this, but we kept it from getting worse and we left you a place to work. The largest thing we ever moved across the ground was not moved to build something. It was moved to bury something carefully, so that our grandchildren would still have the option of digging it back up and finally taking it apart. If you love the engineering stories behind the world's most impossible megaprojects, subscribe to Colossus Build. Every one of them is a bet against physics, money, and time, and we exist to tell you how each bet turned out.